it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. I'm a cop in the Rocky Mountains. Strange things happen here. By Augustus Cordoba. Part 1. It's been 18 years since I first strapped on the badge in Hills Hollow. 18 years in a town so forgotten it barely scars the surface of Colorado's map. Population 1,013, says the rusted sign on the edge of town. I bet we haven't scraped 500 in the past 10 years. This wasn't supposed to be permanent. After the academy, the plan was simple. Put in my time, get my feet wet, then ship out to a real department. Somewhere where being a cop meant something more than breaking up redneck bar brawls or chasing bored teens out of the old mine shaft. But, well, Hills Hollow sinks into you. Like the mist that clings to the hollows at dawn. Like the mountains themselves, ancient, brooding, always watching. There's a silence here that can calm your nerves or crawl up your spine, depending on the day. And there's the other stuff, the things that really don't make the blotter. Things that keep me staring at my cabin ceiling at 3 a.m., ears straining against the breath of the woods outside. Things that make me wonder if leaving is even an option anymore, or if Hills Hollow lets anyone leave at all. The first one happened 3 months in. Routine call. Disturbance out past the old sawmill, one of the trailers that dots the hills out there like rusted tombstones. Domestic trouble, par for the course when wallets get light at the end of the month. I was still green, riding with Sergeant Don Madison, old school, voice like gravel soaked in whiskey and smoke. "I remember, rookie," he rasped. "Folks out here handle their things their own way. Been that way since musket balls and moonshine. We just make sure nobody ends up in a pine box." Don was born in Hills Hollow, third-generation lawman. His blood ran as thick and twisted through this place as the creeks that carved through the valleys. Knew everyone's name, every grudge, every family tree that didn't branch so much as curl in on itself. Then came a call from a neighbor, screaming at the Johnson residence. Hell, Don muttered when the address crackled through the radio. Damn Johnsons again. Problem? Dick Johnson's got a mean streak when the bottle runs dry. Wife's called before. It never sticks. Always takes it back by morning. He looked out the windshield. That family's been holed up in these hills since before redcoats marched. They keep to themselves, usually. I rode up slow. Single white trailer sunk into the dirt. An old Chevy rotting in the weeds. Porch light glowing, but the rest of the place was drowning in shadows. Too dark for just after sundown. Looks quiet, I said. Don's jaw clenched. Too quiet. No dog. They got a dog? Mean old mutt. Barks at clouds. Should have heard us roll in. We went in cautiously. The front door was hanging open like a broken jaw. Don called out. Nothing. No creak, no shuffle, no breath. Inside reeked of stale smoke, sour beer, and something else. Something sharp, metallic, and wrong. My throat clenched against it. Don's flashlight sliced through the gloom, and that's when we saw it. Blood on the walls, on the floor, thick pools soaking into peeling linoleum. Smears, drag marks, like something or someone was pulled down the hall. But no bodies. Room by room, we cleared it. Broken furniture, shattered lamp, more blood in the bedroom. No Dick and no Mrs. Johnson. And then, the damnedest thing. Hanging from the ceiling, stuck into every corner like some backwoods ritual. Stick figures, crude, twisted, made of twigs, dirt, and string, like the woods had followed them inside. I asked Don if we should call it in. He didn't answer. Just stared at one of those stick men swaying in the breeze from the busted window, like it knew something we didn't. Don stared at the thing for a long, frozen moment, then he reached for his radio to call him back up. But he never got a word out. because we heard it. Sound from the tree line behind the trailer, and every hair on my neck stood up straight. Singing. A woman's voice, soft, slow, almost sweet, floating through the night like it didn't belong in this world. Don's face went pale, not just startled, like he was drained. We need to go. Now. What do you mean? We can't just leave a crime scene. This ain't a crime scene, son. His voice was dead serious, a low growl in the gloom. This is something else, something we don't want any part of. The singing grew louder. Then came the crunch of leaves and twigs, footsteps. Not one, many, all closing in, circling the trailer like wolves around a campfire. I drew my weapon. Don, what the hell's going on? He grabbed my arm, hard, stronger than I thought possible for a man pushing 60. Listen to me, and listen good. We're gonna walk, not run, back to the cruiser. We're gonna drive away, and we're never gonna talk about this again. The Johnsons, they made their choice a long time ago. He glanced at the twig figures hanging from the ceiling, their shadows swaying like hanged men in the flashlight's beam. Looks like they, finally paid their debt. Well, I wanted to push back, say we had a job to do, but I looked into Don's eyes, and what I saw shut me up cold. Fear. Pure, primal terror. This from a man who didn't flinch last week when some tweaked-out meth head pointed a shotgun at his chest. So we left. Quiet, careful. Drove back to the station in silence, tires crunching gravel like gunfire in the still night. Don wrote up the report himself. Domestic disturbance, no contact. Premises vacant. 2 days later, Dick Johnson showed up to his job at the lumberyard like nothing had happened. When another deputy asked him about the call, Dick just smiled, said his wife had gone off to stay with her sister out of town. But no one ever saw Mrs. Johnson again. And the old hound, gone too. Don retired 8 months later. Heart problems, officially. But I'd catch him sometimes just standing outside, eyes locked on the mountains, like he was waiting for something, or someone. A week before he left town for good, he pulled me aside. Look, you're a good cop, Jim. You've got the sense God gave a man who wants to live. He handed me an old leather notebook, worn down to the stitching. It's my grandfather's. Sheriff here before me. Get records. Stuff that never made it into reports. Read it. Learn from it. When it's your turn, tap the cover then. You add to it. I opened it that night. Pages yellowed with age, scrawled notes about missing kids near the quarry, who came back days later speaking mangled gibberish, hunters stumbling on mutilated deer arranged in spirals and triangles, strange lights flaring over the mine ridge in the weeks before it collapsed, burying 27 men alive back in 1953. The same family names showed up again and again. Johnson, Simpson, Carver, Webb, and Jones. The oldest bloodlines in the valley. The last entry in Don's grandfather's hand stopped me cold. They're coming through again. God help us all. Dated the day before the collapse of the mine. Don had picked up where his grandfather had left off. More vanishings, more things, all clustered around the same kinds of dates. All solstices, equinoxes, and one in particular that showed up more than any other. October 31st, Halloween. It was 3 weeks away when we handed me the book. This Halloween would mark 70 years since the mine had caved in. Now, I've spent my years in Hills Hollow learning a truth they don't teach you at the academy. Sometimes the job isn't about justice. Sometimes it's about knowing when to look away. Now, those up in North Hollow knew the rules. Keep their stills quiet, don't sell to the miners, and I'd look the other way. I had bigger devils to deal with. like the monthly gatherings out at the old man Carver's farm, where cars with out-of-state plates crawled in past midnight like vultures to a fresh kill. Now, whatever they were doing, as long as no one ended up dead, it wasn't my war to fight. But when Grace Jones disappeared, just 18, smart as a whip, and set to skip town for college, that's when everything changed. I was 4 years on the force by then, still green enough to give a damn. Chief Jackson, the man who filled Don's boots, shrugged it off with barely a glance from his paperwork. "Girl probably ran off to party," he muttered. "Yeah, give it a week. She'll be calling for a bus to get home." But Grace wasn't the type to vanish for fun. Never missed a shift at the diner even. Then there were those symbols carved into her bedroom windowsill. Same kind I'd seen scribbled in the margins of Don's old notebook. No, that wasn't just a coincidence. I drove to the Jones place after my shift. Found her parents sunken into their threadbare couch, clutching each other like castaways. The house smelled like grief and coffee gone cold. "When was the last time you saw Grace?" I asked. Mrs. Jones twisted a tissue between her fingers. "Tuesday evening. Said she was headed to the library." "She make it there?" "I called Marjorie around 9. Grace never showed." "Did she take anything with her? Clothes, her phone?" "Phone's still charging on her desk," Mr. Jones said. "Backpack still in her room." "Any sign she was upset? Fighting with anyone? New friends?" A look passed between them then, heavy and hesitant. "Well, there was that boy," Mrs. Jones said quietly, "from up Simpson way." Mr. Jones's jaw clenched at that. "No daughter of mine." But he stopped himself. "The Simpsons ain't right. Never have been." "Dan Simpson," Mrs. Jones added. "He's her age. Quiet kid. But he's been talking to Grace at school." I knew the Simpsons. Everyone did. Lived deep in the woods, came to town only for supplies or bail money. The older ones were mean drunkards. The younger ones stayed in the shadows. And Don's notebook, well, let's just say the Simpson name showed up in damn near every unexplainable thing that had happened out here. I promised the Joneses I'd do everything I could. On my way out, I noticed a garden stone by the steps, a river rock carved with 3 spirals. That's new," I said. Mrs. Jones gripped the crucifix from around her neck. "Protection," she whispered. "From them, the ones in the woods." Then she shut the door without another word. Part 2. The road to the Simpson compound was barely there. Just a trail of ruts and dirt, swallowed by thick pine and shadows. My cruiser groaned over the rocks as I radioed in my location. Chief Jackson's voice crackled through the static. "Simpsons, what the hell you doing out there?" Following a lead on the Jones girl. There was a long silence. "Listen to me," he finally said. "You turn that car around, that's an order." "Since when do we need an invitation to investigate a missing person?" "Since always." "Well, trust me on this, I killed the radio after that. There are some things a badge can't ignore, no matter what the chief says. Simpson property didn't creep up on you. It declared itself, loud and mean, with a splintered sign nailed to a dead oak tree. Trespassers will be shot. Faded white paint, but the message was loud enough. Beyond that warning, the land opened like a festering wound. The buildings leaned like drunkards on a bender. The main house looked like it had been patched together over decades by people who didn't care if it stood or rotted. And the barn sagged like it was dying of something slow. No cars, no lights, just smoke circling from the chimney and the distant, jittery sound of chickens. Well, somebody was home. I left the cruiser running. Couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. It was like the woods were watching. The air was wrong. It was thick with silence. Not even a bird dared to speak. Then the front door creaked open. Out stepped a man, tall, bony, grey beard hanging like Spanish moss. Carried a shotgun in the crook of his arm like it belonged there. Didn't point at me, but he didn't need to. You're about a mile past where you ought to be, officer, he called, voice low and calm. Too calm. I'm looking for Dan Simpson, I said, hands where he could see them. Need to ask a few questions about a missing girl. His eyes didn't blink. No Dan here. I've got reliable info that says otherwise. Grace Jones. She's been gone 3 days. He tasted the name like it was a bad memory. Jones, he said. Don't know any Joneses anymore. That anymore turned my spine to ice. Sir, I'm going to need you to speak with your nephew. Dry rasp slipped out of him, like stone across bone. Laughter, I realized. Nephew. That'd be Dan, sure enough, but he ain't here. Even if he was, he wouldn't know nothing about no girl. Where might I find him, then? The man's eyes narrowed to slits at this. You're not listening, officer. We Simpsons handle our own, always have. 3 centuries in these hills. We don't take kindly to meddling. Then from inside the house, a sound, like a thump, something muffled. Again, he didn't flinch, but his grip on the shotgun tightened. What was that? Old house, he said. She settles when the weather changes. But it hadn't rained. There was no wind. The temperature hadn't budged all day. You mind if I take a look inside? Won't take but a minute. You got a warrant? Not yet, but I can get one. He smiled, a full, cold smile with teeth that looked like they came from a dentist in Beverly Hills, not the backwoods. By the time you get back, there won't be nothing left to find. Another sound, louder this time, a voice, thin, frightened. Well, that was it. Sir, put the weapon down and step aside. He didn't move. You're walking into something you can't begin to understand, son. The only mistake would be turning away. Now put the gun down. A long second stretched like pulled wire. I half expected him to raise that shotgun, but instead he placed it gently on the porch railing and backed off, hands raised. Be it on your head, he said. You were warned. I moved forward, gun drawn. Police. Anyone inside, make yourself known. The house swallowed my voice. The interior was dim, lit by oil lamps and the low orange glow of a dying fire. Furniture looked handmade, maybe centuries old. Everything smelled of smoke, herbs, and something sour beneath it all. Jars lined every wall, hundreds of them. Roots, bones, things with eyes. Grace, I called out. Grace Jones. A muffled cry answered from upstairs. I climbed the staircase, every step groaning like it might break under my boots. Hey, stay where I can see you, I barked at the old man. He didn't move, just rocked slowly in that damn chair, eyes reflecting the firelight, lips curled in that same rotten smile. Oh, go on up, he whispered. She's waiting. See what you find. The stairs groaned under my boots, each creak echoing like a warning. At the top, a narrow hallway stretched out, tight and claustrophobic, with 4 doors, all shut like secrets waiting to be pried open. The sound came again, Last door on the left. "Grace, it's the police. Are you in there?" I called out. Another muffled cry answered me. I twisted the doorknob. Locked. "Stand back from the door," I shouted, then kicked just below the knob. The frame cracked, splinters flying, and the door gave way with a sharp crack. Inside was a small room, lit only by a weak kerosene lamp perched on a side table. Curtains choked out the window light. The glow cast long twitching shadows over a scene that made my blood turn to ice. Grace Jones sat cross-legged in the center of the floor, surrounded by what looked like a ring of salt, or maybe ash. Her wrists and ankles were bound with rough twine, a filthy gag stretched tight across her mouth. But it wasn't the bindings that made my breath hitch. No, it was her eyes. Black, not just dark, pitch black, like oil. No whites, no iris, just an abyss. They reflected the lamplight like a void staring back. Next to her knelt a boy, same age, pale skin, long dark hair hanging like damp ropes. He was scribbling symbols onto the wooden floor with chalk, glancing between his marks and a heavy yellowed book sprawled open beside him. He looked up. His eyes were human, wide and terrified. "Dan Simpson," I barked, leveling my gun at him. "Don't move. What the hell is going on here?" "You don't understand," he stammered, voice shaking. I'm trying to help her." Grace let out a noise behind her gag. It was low and oh, so wrong. Her head twisted toward me, cracking at the joints like a doll gone wrong. Our eyes met, and a spike of pain lanced through my skull. Voices followed, whispering. No language I recognized. It was ancient and cold. "What did you do to her?" I growled, grinding through the pain. Dan shook his head violently. "I didn't do anything. She came to me. She said it's inside her. I'm trying to trap it. Look, if I untie her now, then..." "Untie her? Now?" I can't. If I break the circle..." I stepped forward, weapon still trained on him, and reached for Grace. "No, don't!" Dan lunged, but too late. My hand across the circle. Chalk and ash scattered as my boot brushed it, and the air snapped. The lamp flickered, then flared violently. The temperature in the room crashed. Grace's body jolted, her spine arching backward until I thought it would snap. And then she spoke. Only it wasn't her voice. Something ancient and guttural crawled out of her mouth, speaking in that same damned language that clawed through my head. Dan screamed and grabbed the book. "Oh God, now you've done it. It's loose." The whispers became a roar, tearing at the inside of my skull. Grace's limbs convulsed, bending at angles no human body should ever move. The skin bubbled and rippled like something beneath it wanted out. And then the old man was there, silent and sudden. He stepped through the doorway without a sound. "I told you," he said, calm as ice. "Some things, once opened, don't close easy." He moved past me, faster than I thought possible, pulling a small leather pouch from his coat. He reached inside and drew out a pinch of dark powder. "Hold her," he snapped. Dan didn't hesitate. He dove forward, pinning Grace's shoulders as she thrashed and screamed behind the gag. I should have stopped them, should have arrested both of them, but I didn't move. The voices had become screams, and I stood there like a statue, drowning in noise. The old man began chanting, scattering the powder in a tight circle around Grace. Her body seized and then froze. The black in her eyes boiled. And then, like wet cloth tearing, something started to come out of her mouth. wasn't human. Writhing, viscous blackness oozed from her lips. It shimmered like tar, thick and alive. The air turned foul, rotten. I gagged, bile burning my throat. The thing kept coming, rising, spilling forth, forming a shape. Tall, fluid, shivering in the lamplight like a shadow ripped loose from a soul. The old man's chant rose in pitch. Dan's voice joined him. Same alien tongue, same rhythm. The black mass twisted faster, coiling like a snake in a cyclone, and then it collapsed. Inward. Disappearing with a crack like distant thunder, the thing was gone. Grace collapsed where she sat, limp, unconscious, but still breathing. When her eyelids fluttered open for a moment, her eyes were just eyes again. Human, brown, rimmed with white. The old man turned toward me, sweat dripping from his weathered face. "Ah, you see, officer," he rasped. "Some things in these mountains don't make it into your reports." I holstered my sidearm with trembling hands. What the hell was that? Old as the dirt we stand on. Hungrier than anything you know. Patient, always watching, always looking for a way in. He jerked his head toward Grace then. Girl went digging where she shouldn't have. Found a door. We tried to shut it before something walked through. Is she, will she be okay? Dan was crouched beside her, fingers on her pulse. "It should be," he muttered. "We got most of it out." Most of it? My voice came out raw. The old man's eyes locked with mine. Once it gets a taste, doesn't really let go. Part of it stays, watches, waits. He motioned to the door then. "Take her home. Tell her parents not to take their eyes off of her." Then from his coat he pulled a small stone pendant hanging from a strip of worn leather and pressed it into my hand. "Make her wear this. Never take it off." I stared at it like it might bite. "Why are you helping her? Why now?" He gave a slow, grim smile. "We Simpsons have been keeping things in check for generations. Folks call us witches. Others call us worse. But we're just gatekeepers." "Gatekeepers of what?" His grin widened then, something ancient in it. "Of borders. Borders to places you'd rather not know exist." Part 3. I carried Grace to the cruiser, wrapped her in a blanket that Dan handed me. She stayed out cold, whispering nonsense in her sleep. It was English now, but all jumbled, kind of off. As I climbed behind the wheel, the old man stepped up to the window. "You'll see more now," he said in a low voice. "Now that you've touched it. Darkness leaves a mark, opens your eyes to things most folks are lucky enough to miss." "What does that mean?" "It means you're part of it now. The watching, the keeping." He reached in and tapped the center of my forehead with a bony finger. "These mountains have chosen you, whether you want it or not." I returned Grace to her parents that night, told them she'd been found wandering near the old quarry, disoriented but unharmed. I passed on Simpson's instructions. When I showed Mrs. Jones the pendant, something flickered behind her eyes. "Simpson work," she whispered, but she slipped the cord around her daughter's neck anyway. Now Grace recovered, on the surface at least. She went back to school, graduated, left for university. But I saw her sometimes back in town for the holidays. There's always something behind her eyes, something that didn't belong in someone so young. And she never, not once, went near those woods again. As for me, well, Simpson had been right. I saw things differently after that night. Patterns in the calls that came to the station, marks on doors, subtle, carved deep into the wood. Families who never left their homes after sundown, especially on certain dates that didn't appear on any calendar. I started writing in Don's old notebook, but my own arsenal of charms, bought some from The Simpsons even, others from the Webbs, who turned out to be more than just moonshiners. I learned to trust my gut, learned that when it twisted, something was wrong. Like that night I pulled over a silver sedan with Ohio plates on the interstate. Yeah, clean-cut guy behind the wheel, corporate-looking, polished. Said he'd taken a wrong turn. GPS had screwed him over. Seemed normal, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. When I swept the flashlight over the back seat, I saw the upholstery was torn to hell. Deep gouges, too many of them too deliberate. Oh, my vision swam. I had to look away. "Everything all right, officer?" he asked. For a second, just a heartbeat, I heard it again. That whisper, that inhuman language curling beneath his words like a serpent beneath a floorboard. No, nothing was all right. Nothing would be ever again. I waved him back toward the interstate with a warning he barely seemed to hear. Still, I followed, 2 car lengths back, headlights off, just to make sure he left. In the rear view, he crossed the county line. I swear the glow of his taillights flared purple, not brake light red, not reflection, purple. And then he was gone. By my 10th year in the uniform, I was chief. Jackson handed me the badge when he retired, the kind of ceremony that doesn't make the papers. And by then I had a reputation, fair but firm. I didn't give a damn about weed or bar fights, but if something threatened the balance, if it stirred the wrong kind of attention, I came down like a sledgehammer. The old families knew what that meant. They respected it. The Simpsons would nod as they passed me on the main street. Mrs. Webb, half blind and twice as sharp, started leaving her preserves on my porch. Thick golden liquid in jars, slick as motor oil, burned like fire down the throat. I didn't ask what was in it. Never asked. Still, couldn't stop everything. By year 12, 3 hikers had vanished along High Falls Trail. Out-of-towners, grad students, poking around for a thesis on Rocky Mountain ecology. Their camp was untouched, though. Backpacks, notes, cameras. Half-cooked food sat by a cold fire. But the trees bled. Symbols carved deep in the bark, still weeping fresh sap by the time my deputies arrived. I knew those signs. I'd seen them in Don's old notebook, scrawled beside yellowed newspaper clippings from the 70s. Missing persons, always near that trail, always the same sigils. Well, we launched a full search, dogs, drones, even got a chopper from the state. 2 days, nothing. On the 7th day, I went up there alone. Climbed up past the old mine to the clearing mentioned in Don's book. Place the old bloodlines used for, things. The clearing was ringed by ancient oaks, their limbs curling like twisted fingers, all reaching toward a stone altar in the center. Flat, cracked, older than the state itself, probably. Dan Simpson was already there. He'd aged into his 30s by this point. Same wiry frame as his uncle, same eyes that didn't blink when they should. He'd taken over after the old man had passed 5 years back. Didn't say a word as I approached. "Hey, those students," I said. "Was it necessary?" He didn't even pretend not to know. They disturbed something, broke a seal that had held for 100 years. "They were kids," I growled. "Digging, taking samples." "They bled the heart trees," he said flatly. "Some trees should not bleed. That means they vanish." He shook his head. "Not punishment, Chief. Containment." Well, that stopped me. I looked at him hard. What got into them? "It was spreading," he said. "We couldn't let them leave the forest." "So, they're dead." Dan didn't answer right away. When he did, it was quiet. Not exactly. The sweat on my back ran cold despite the heat then. The hell does that mean? It means death's a mercy in these woods. Not everyone gets it. I ran a hand across the stone altar like it was an old friend. Your predecessor understood. So did his father, and his before him. Well, I'm not them, I said. No, Dan agreed. You're not. You've been touched, marked. That's why you're still standing. He reached out and tapped my forehead. Same spot his uncle had years ago. These mountains don't let their chosen ones go. Well, I wanted to deny it, scream that I wasn't a part of this, but I didn't. Instead I asked, will it happen again? As long as outsiders come, he said, digging into what they don't understand. And he shrugged. Try to warn them. Trail signs, old stories, talk of bears, unstable rocks near the mines. Well, most listen. The ones who don't. Dan turned toward the trees then. Well, they join the balance. I didn't say another word, just turned and walked back down the ridge to where my cruiser waited in the dark. I scratched a new entry into Don's battered notebook, the ink bleeding like the truth I barely held onto at this point. The official story, missing, presumed dead, frozen, mauled, gone. Families held their memorial in the town hall. Faces tight, eyes down, whispers of sympathy drowning in fear. Life here kept grinding forward, but I knew better. 18 years in this hellhole, and now another incident. The anniversary of the mine's collapse. Yesterday before dawn, Dan Simpson showed up on my porch, hollow-eyed, ragged, like he'd been dragged through hell and back. No hello, no small talk. It's happening again, he said. And worse, he added, voice low and raw. The seals are breaking faster than we can patch them. I already knew what he'd want. What do you need from me? He stared into me, eyes sharp, burning, searching. A binding, he said. Blood freely given by one who walks between worlds. I felt the old scar burning on my palm. The night I shattered the circle with Grace Jones, spilled blood into this cursed place. Dan nodded toward the altar, when the moon hits its peak. I asked the question that chilled my soul then. What if I, refuse? His face was stone. And pray you're among the first to be taken when the door swings open. Well, I've been turning his words over all day as I cruise the quiet streets of the old town. It feels wrong. Buildings that have stood for 100 years suddenly seem fragile. Flimsy barriers holding back the ancient wilderness pressing in. The mountains loom, black and hulking like monsters eavesdropping on our last desperate whispers. At the station, I've made my moves. Overtime authorized, deputies armed heavy with shotguns and extra rounds. Curfew declared, for safety, I told them. They think I'm paranoid. They don't see what I see. They haven't read Don's notebook. They haven't traced the damn clockwork of disappearances every 70 years like a curse. Well, tonight, I face my choice. Offer my blood to bind myself to this place, and whatever nightmare lurks just beyond the evil, or step back and watch the darkness claw free at last. Either way, this town owns me now. These mountains have marked me, just like they marked Don, his father, and the one before him. I check my watch. 6 hours until midnight. 6 hours until I meet Dan at the altar and seal my fate. But for now, I have to make my rounds. Watch my town, protect it. Hold it together for as long as it's still a town and not a feeding ground. The sun's dipping low. Shadows crawl across Main Street like spilled ink. The night is coming. Part 4. From deep in the dark forest, a sound slips through. Neither howl nor scream, but something twisted, raw, a noise that makes the cruiser's windows hum like they're about to crack. I slam the ignition and roll toward the edge of town, the dark tree line swallowing the fading light, the threshold to the wilderness. My radio spits static, then my deputy's voice cuts through, sharp and tense. "Chief, got a situation at the Rusty Nail. Multiple calls coming in." "What kind of situation?" I bark, gripping the wheel tighter. "Not sure. Reports of a fight, but weird stuff. Patrons say the mirrors behind the bar are showing things that aren't there. Bartender claims the bottles are bleeding." Clench my fists. The Rusty Nail, right at the crossroads of Main and the old mine road, just above the collapsed main shaft. 27 miners died down there back in the day. "Look, tell everyone to stay inside, away from the windows," I order. "And deputy, don't look at any mirrors." My tires squeal on the cracked asphalt as I spin a hard U-turn and gun it towards the Rusty Nail. The neon sign sputters like it's gasping for breath when I pull into the gravel lot. A cluster of pale-faced patrons are huddled outside, their breaths fogging in the cold night air. Their eyes are wild, too wide for comfort, even through the haze of booze. Frank Williams, the owner, bolts toward me, desperation dragging his voice out. "Oh, thank God you're here. Oh, something's wrong. Inside is the mirrors." "I know, Frank." I cut him off. "Get these people out. Tell them to go home. Lock their doors now." He nods, urgency snapping his limbs into motion, shepherding the shaken crowd toward their cars. In hindsight, letting them go was a gamble, but they couldn't stay. I snatched my shotgun from the rack and stepped toward the entrance. Through the grimy windows, the bar soaked in unnatural darkness, even though the lights hang overhead, flickering uselessly. My deputy meets me at the door, his young face pale, his jaw tight like he's swallowing a storm. "Chief, I tried to lock it down, but the mirrors, they're showing things, wrong things." "Wrong how?" I ask. His eyes dart around, refusing to hold mine. "People, but not the people they're supposed to be. Like they wear the wrong faces and something's moving behind them." I nod grimly. Don's notebook had warned about this. Mirror distortions, twisted reflections, during the cursed anniversaries. Anyone still inside?" "Just old Phil," he answers quietly. "Passed out in the back booth when it started. Won't wake up." Phil Carter, 80 years old, fixture in these parts, tied to every bloodline in the county. A walking legend with local lore and a drinking reputation that could fell a grizzly. Not someone I want caught in the middle of whatever's happening here. Right, clear the perimeter. Keep everyone back at least 100 yards. No way you're going in alone. He hesitates, eyes pleading. That's an order. Move. I ready my shotgun and edge toward the door. It creaks loud, like a warning when I shove it open. The air inside hits me cold, dropping at least 20 degrees. My breath fogs out in sharp clouds. "Phil," I call. "Phil Carter." A muffled groan answers from the back booth. I spot him slumped over the table, motionless. The bar looks normal at first. Stools kicked over like they're closing up, glasses drying on racks. But the mirrors, they're all wrong. The giant mirror behind the bar doesn't reflect this room. Instead it shows me the same space, but rotten. Floorboards crumbling, walls soaked in mold. Dark figures sit where no one should. One shifts, slowly turns toward me. Wears an old miner's uniform. Well, once maybe, but now shredded, soaked in something black and wet. Its face is hidden, but I feel its eyes slicing through the glass, staring straight at me. "Not tonight," I growl. "Not in my town." The figure stands, and others follow its gaze. They press hands against the mirror's surface, testing, clawing, hungry. I drag my eyes away from the other mirrors scattered around. Each one shows a different nightmare, none reflecting reality. "Phil, Wake the hell up. I shake him hard, but his head slumps, then jerks up. His eyes are glazed, empty. Yeah. His voice is distant, like it's coming from the bottom of a well. They're coming back. All of them. Oh, we're leaving, I say, hoisting him up. He feels lighter than he should. Too late. His gaze locks on the mirror above our booth, not showing us, but rather the inside of a mineshaft. Support beams sagging, dust and rocks falling, men screaming and scrambling under weak headlamps. The mine's collapse is happening right now, 70 years late, in some twisted version of reality bleeding through this crack. A jagged fissure splits the glass, oozing thick dark liquid, not water, too thick, too red. Phil laughs, a hollow broken sound. The mountains are bleeding out their secrets. The giant mirror has exploded, but the shards don't fall. No, they hang, spinning slowly in the air. Where the mirror was, a void yawns, a darkness that shouldn't exist in this world, swallowing light, bending space. Figures move inside it, creeping closer to the threshold. I raise my shotgun, finger tight on the trigger. Phil's hand clamps on my wrist with iron grip. That won't help, he says, eyes sharp now. You can't kill what's already died once. He pulls a worn leather pouch from his pocket and presses it into my hand, heavy with strange ingredients that I can't place. You'll have to use this. I hurl the pouch into the black moor behind the bar. The powder inside hangs in the air, sparkling faintly in the dim light, then bursts into a blinding, searing flash. Unearthly screams rip through the darkness as the figures retreat. The mirror shards clatter to the floor then, just broken glass now. It's not going to hold, Phil says, rising unsteadily to his feet. Not this time, he spits. Too many seals are shattered. Too much debt owed. He fixes his eyes on me, cold and hard. Owed by whom? By all of us. Now, this town was built on deals, bargains with things older than the mountain itself. The miners broke the deepest seal back in 1953. They awoke something that should have stayed buried. The old families cut deals, bought us 70 years acquired, in exchange for... His voice trails off, dark. Blood service. Kids, sometimes. Then he looks away. My own grandfather was part of it. I've learned things no man should ever know. Things that help bind this all together. The building now groans around us, timbers creaking like they're trapped inside the hull of a ship caught in a storm. Come on, we need to go, I growl, yanking him toward the exit. Outside, the night has twisted into something else. The sky churns with clouds that glow faint, like lightning trapped in smoke. The air smells like ozone and blood, copper thick and sharp. My deputy stands at the perimeter with a handful of shaken townsfolk, watching in frozen horror. Yeah, get them out now, I bark, half dragging Phil toward my cruiser. Chief, what's happening? But before I can answer, the ground trembles. A slow slide, then a brutal lurch that nearly throws us off of our feet. Car alarm screams somewhere in the distance. Earthquake! Someone shouts. Phil laughs, hollow and broken. It's waking. It's waking again. Another quake slams through the earth, stronger this time, and a fissure cracks open in the gravel lot, steam rising like the breath of some monster from below. Hey, everyone evacuate. Move! I roar across the growing chaos. Deputy, radio all units. Get them moving east. County line only. This road's a death trap, too close to the old quarry. He grips my shoulder, panic rising. Evac for an earthquake? I lock eyes with him, voice cold as steel. This isn't an earthquake. I don't have time to explain. You have to trust me. Get these people out. Do not stop for anything. No one stays behind. Something in my stare cuts through the doubt he has, and he nods sharply and bolts to his cruiser. I shove Phil into my passenger seat and slide behind the wheel, starting the engine. He grabs my arm. "Where are you taking me?" "Out of town, with the others." "No." His voice is firm. "Take me to the altar." I stare at him then, realization dawning. "Phil, you're 80 years old. That ritual, it'll kill you." He meets my gaze, as steady as steel. "I'm dying anyway. Cancer. Doctor gave me 3 months. That was 2 weeks ago. Better to go out useful than wasting away in some hospital bed." Another quake rattles the cruiser hard. Through the windshield, the bar's windows glow with a sick, unnatural light. "To the altar," I say grimly. We need to at least slow it down until the Simpson clan can finish the main binding. Put the car in drive. The choice is made. I'm supposed to meet down there at midnight anyway. All is good. Phil sinks back into his seat. 3 bloodlines will run deeper than 2. The drive up the ridge is a nightmare. Tremors keep rattling the ground, jerking and twisting with no rhythm. Twice the road cracks open before us, jagged fissures forcing detours. The forest presses in on both sides of the narrow mountain road. It's alive and watching us, and trees sway with no wind, shadows slithering between trunks like solid beasts. Something huge crosses the road ahead, bigger than a bear, but it's moving wrong. Its shape shifts and twists grotesquely before vanishing into the underbrush. I don't slow down. No way to stare down that kind of horror. We hit the clearing above the old mine just past 11 o'clock. The site looks down on the sealed entrance where 27 men died 70-plus years ago. Dan's already there with the Simpson family, arranging worn relics into a circle. An old miner's lamp, shards of coal, pieces of timber from the original supports. "It's starting again," Dan says, voice low and hard. "And the mountain's restless. The debt's got to be paid." Phil's voice cuts in, grim and steady. "The dead want to be remembered. They want respect." Beneath our feet, the earth rumbles, a low groan like metal bending under unbearable weight. "Every 70 years, Dan says, they try to claw back to warn us, remind us of what greed costs." He hands us each a cold, heavy piece of history. Old miner tags, rusted but still bearing names and numbers. "The ritual's simple," Dan explains. "We acknowledge the debt, honor the dead, promise their sacrifice won't be forgotten." "If we don't?" I ask. "They'll make sure that we remember, one way or another. They'll walk among us, broken bodies, last gasps, the tunnels, what the company buried along with them." Another quake hits, stronger this time. From town, alarms scream, car horns blaring, security systems triggered by the shaking. "This is no restless spirit bullshit," I say, voice tight with dread. "Grief and rage have power," Dan says simply, "especially when it's been locked away for 70 years. 27 men died in the darkness, choking on cold dust, trapped beneath tons of rock. Death like that leaves a stain." He gestures at the relics around us. "We stand as witnesses, representing a town that forgot, families who profited, and the law that looked away." The ground shudders violently. A fissure cracks open at the edge of the clearing, steam curling up from its depths. The bitter scent of cold dust thickens the air, even though the mine's been dead for decades. We take our places, and Dan begins reciting the fallen miner's name. Dan begins reciting the fallen miners' names, his voice slicing through the night. Old Phil joins in, voice steady, knowing every name by heart. I stand silently, clutching the tarnished tag as the names echo in the cold air. The tremors slow. The fissure closes. The groaning from below eases. When the last name falls, Phil steps forward, dropping to one knee, hand pressed to the earth. "We remember," he says, voice cracking. "We acknowledge the dead. We honor the sacrifice." Dan and I echo the vow. And the air shifts, heavy pressure lifting, the mountain's rage easing. But as Phil tries to rise, his hand clamps his chest and he collapses. Dan and I rush to him, but it's too late. His heart has given out at the moment of reckoning. "He knew," Dan says quietly. "The Carters keep the memory alive. Phil told me if his heart stopped tonight, it'd be a good death." We carry Phil's body back to my cruiser. Quiet respect in every step. Tomorrow he'll rest in the Carter family plot. Another guardian laid to rest with the ghosts of Hills Hollow. On the way down, I radio the deputy, calling off the evacuation with a cover story about minor seismic shifts in the old mine settling. The townsfolk will buy it. They always do. "Will this happen again?" I ask Dan as we near the town. "In another 70 years, he says. "The cycle goes on till the debt's paid." "What debt?" He gives me a cold look. "Well, not the mining companies. They're gone. The debt Hills Hollow was built on. Gold money soaked in blood. Everyone got rich while turning blind eyes to busted safety rules. Everyone pretended not to see what the company was really doing. So yeah, we just run this sick ritual every 70 years and call it done." "No," Dan says, his face hard as stone. "The ritual only buys time, but the debt grows heavier every cycle. The signs come sooner, the hauntings get worse. One day the ritual won't cut it." "So what then?" I ask. "Then Hills Hollow has to face its past. Every filthy secret dragged into the light. Not just the old families who keep the lies buried." I drop Dan off on the edge of town. Before he climbs out, he pulls a small wooden box from the dashboard. "Gold dust from the original collapse," he says. "If you start seeing things, the mirror showing inside the mine, dreams of being trapped underground, use this. It links you to them, lets you hear their warnings." Warnings. The mountain holds more than restless dead. The mining company didn't just wake the dead with their greed. They ripped open something older, something sleeping deep in the veins beneath Hills Hollow since before the first settlers showed up. I watched Dan fade into the dark, his words gnawing at me. The old mine's always been more than a tragic footnote. The shadow hanging over Hills Hollow, waiting. I drive back to the station, my fingers rolling over a tarnished miner's tag. James Carter, number 17. Phil's grandfather, one of the 27 lost. Well, the notebook waits in my drawer. I pull it out, flipping to Don's notes, about how the company dug too deep, hit a seam that shouldn't have been touched. Black coal that wasn't coal at all. My own entry stares back at me. Tonight's nightmare inked in. As I write, movement flickers out of the corner of my eye. A dark shape, a man in a miner's helmet. I whip around to see nothing. But the stench of coal dust hangs thick in the air, a silent warning. The ghosts are quiet for now, but they're not at peace. I grip my pen tighter and keep writing. 70 years since the mine collapsed. The anniversary ritual's done now, but not without a price. Tomorrow, I train my deputy. Harder, longer. Maybe one day they'll understand what it really means to be a cop in Hills Hollow. We're not just keeping peace among the living. In this town, the strange things never stop. Never have and never will. Well, my dear friends, I hope you enjoyed that one. Love the setting, Rocky Mountains, and of course, an old mine shaft and all other kinds of things going on. So, as usual, your thoughts, feelings, anything else you want to say about that story in the comment section below the video. And of course, I'll do my best to reply to as many comments as I can. Now, I'm in the transitional stage of going back to England at this point, so I'll just try and reply as much as I can, as best I can, but I won't be as active as I am usually. Anyway, you all know why if you've been listening to the last few stories. Won't go into it too much. Thank you again, as ever, for listening, and I will be back again very soon. Podcasts keep going on my second channel as well, so don't forget to listen to those. Till then, my dear friends, till the next time, you all sleep well, yeah?